Imagine those places where time seems to have stood still, those old, empty buildings, where instead of the bustle of the day, the silence of the night prevails, where in the air, along with particles of dust, the echoes of bygone secrets and strange events also float. These are the places where the coming and going of humans has ceased, but is something else still present there. Are these empty corners and long shadows just our own minds frightening us? Or, sometimes, does this silence itself speak up, in a voice that makes your hair stand on end? Unto our today's story. On the outskirts of the old mill town of Blackburn stood the Victoria Textile Mill. The faded, gilded letters on its sign were the only testament to the life it once held, the clamor of workers, the rhythmic thunder of the looms. Now, even that sign was rusting and slumping. A stubborn ivy creeper, snaking up the soot-stained brickwork, seemed to be slowly pulling the ruins down into the earth. 10 years had passed since anyone had set foot inside for work. No owners, no workers, only dust, cobwebs, and a deep, profound darkness remained. The responsibility of guarding this silence fell upon Arthur, a 65-year-old security guard. More than half his life had been spent watching over other people's empty, forgotten places. His face was a road map of his years. His eyes held a permanent tiredness, but his posture was still straight, a relic of his army days. He preferred the night shift. The quiet didn't frighten him. He found it comfortable. That night was no different. The clock on the wall of his booth neared 1:30 a.m. A heavy, suffocating silence lay thick in the air, broken only by the distant hum of a lorry on the motorway or the forlorn bark of a dog from a neighboring estate. Arthur was sitting in his small guard booth, idly turning the brittle pages of an old paperback. A draft from a cracked window made the single yellowing bulb swing, causing serpentine shadows to writhe across the walls. Suddenly, thump, thump, thump. The sound was like someone hitting a heavy iron door with immense force. Arthur's heart leapt into his throat. He strained his ears. The sound was clear. It was coming from the direction of warehouse number 3. Warehouse number 3. Even before the mill shut down, that particular warehouse was rarely used. People said it held old, broken machine parts and discarded batches of fabric. Arthur remembered clearly. He had secured its new heavy-duty padlock just that evening. And the key? The key was still right there, in the pocket of his trousers. So this noise? An animal? But with such force? A burglar? But the lock was completely intact. He picked up his heavy torch and walked towards the warehouse with deliberate steps. The beam of his light cut through the darkness, illuminating every piece of scattered brick, every gnarled tree root. The large, iron-banded door of warehouse number 3 came into view. The padlock, as he had thought, was perfectly fine. It hung securely in place. But from inside, thump, 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 the sound came again. This time it was louder, more frantic, like some caged animal strength was trying to batter its way out. The door itself shuddered in its frame. His heart was hammering against his ribs, but a sense of duty pushed Arthur forward. Hesitantly, his voice barely a whisper, he called out, "Who's in there? Is someone there?" In response, only the same relentless thumping. It seemed to grow intense at the sound of his voice. He pressed his ear against the cold wood of the door. No voice came from within, but he could have sworn he heard something. A rapid, shallow breathing, or perhaps a muffled sobbing. Gathering his courage, he pulled the key from his pocket. His hand was trembling. He turned the lock. The moment the bolt slid back, the door swung open on its own, as if someone had been waiting on the other side. The darkness within was dense and choking. He shone his torch inside. At first, he saw nothing out of the ordinary. The same old wooden shelves, now sagging under their own weight, laden with rusted machine parts and discarded batches of fabric. Everything was covered in a thick layer of grime. There was no sign of any person. The thumping had also stopped. Arthur thought perhaps a large stray dog or a fox had gotten trapped inside and was now hiding. He slowly swept the torch beam to the right-hand corner. Nothing. Then to the left. Also nothing. Finally, he cast the light towards the far back corner. There, a figure stood. It was the silhouette of a woman. Long, completely lank and tangled hair obscured her face. Her skin was utterly black. Not the black of ethnicity, but a stark absolute black, like pitch or charcoal. It was impossible to make out any features. She stood perfectly still, like a statue. A strangled gasp escaped Arthur's lips. He wanted to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot. In that same instant, the figure, the black woman, moved. She raised her head slightly, the hair parting just enough, and in the darkness, two gleaming jet-black points fixed their gaze on him. Then, without any warning, the figure, the black woman, shot straight towards him. He heard no sound of feet on the concrete floor. She seemed to glide, moving as fast as a thought, directly at him. Arthur screamed, "Help!" and wrenched himself back, grabbing the door and shoving it shut with all his might. No sound came from within. With fumbling, shaking hands, he forced the padlock through the hasp and turned the key, locking it firmly. Yet his anxious eyes remained fixed on the door, as if expecting it to burst open. He ran back to the guard booth. His breath came in ragged gasps. His shirt was soaked with cold sweat. He burst into the booth, locked the door behind him, and collapsed into a rickety chair. His heart was beating so violently he thought it would crack his ribs. He shut his eyes tight. That face, that black face, that gliding figure was seared in his mind. What was that? What did I see? A trick of the mind? Exhaustion? Lack of sleep? He muttered to himself. Gradually his breathing slowed. The pounding in his chest subsided. He thought perhaps he was a victim of fatigue. Sometimes the darkness plays tricks on the eyes. Yes, that must be it. There was nothing there. Nothing at all. Summoning his nerve, he peered out of the booth's window towards warehouse number 3. It was dark in the distance. The padlock, gleaming in the faint ambient light, was still securely fastened. He breathed a sigh of relief. See, all is well. He was just thinking this when his gaze drifted towards the warehouse's window. The window of warehouse number 3, which was about 7 feet off the ground, had something in it. It was the woman. She was standing right there at the window, looking out. Her long, tangled hair was now pressed against the grimy glass. Her black, expressionless face was directed straight at him. Her eyes, those black points, were now perfectly clear. They held no anger, no pain, no joy. They were completely empty, like bottomless wells. Arthur felt on the verge of fainting. He couldn't move. He could only stare at the spectacle. The figure was not moving either. The two of them locked eyes, one in the guard booth, the other at the warehouse window. Then it happened that Arthur blinked. For just a split second his eyelids closed, and when he opened them, the woman was inside the guard booth, standing directly behind him. Her black face was no longer at the window, but was now staring at him from the darkness of the booth itself. Her hair no longer framed a window pane, but hung down, almost touching the floor. She was utterly silent, not a sound.
only a sharp, menacing silence that filled the entire room. Arthur tried to scream, but no sound left his throat. He tried to rise from the chair, but his limbs had turned to lead. He could only watch. Her shadow was cast on the wall in front of him, a perfect silhouette of that black visage. At that moment, the booth's light bulb flickered and died. Darkness fell. Arthur felt the black woman moving closer to him. He felt her breath on the back of his neck. He felt a sharp, cold gust of air pass by his ear. The last thing Arthur was aware of was a sound, a rasping, rope-like voice that whispered something into his ear. "Thank you for letting me out." A few hours later, Arthur's eyes snapped open. A ceiling fan was spinning overhead. His vision focused on sterile white walls and an IV drip stand. He was in a hospital. His wife and the mill's site manager were standing by his bedside with their faces etched with deep concern. "Thank God you're awake, Arthur," the manager said softly. Arthur's throat was parched. He gestured for water. After taking a sip, he found his voice hoarse and weak. What happened?" "Pete from the morning shift found you unconscious on the floor just outside your booth. Your heart was racing, but there was not a mark on you. No injuries, no blood. You were just completely out cold." Arthur closed his eyes. The black eyes, the figure, it all came flooding back. He wanted to scream, but only a helpless silence remained. A few days later, a doctor and the mill's owner came to see him. They wanted to know what had happened that night. Arthur was silent at first, out of fear or because he knew no one would believe him. But when pressed, he told the whole story. The noise from the warehouse, the black woman, her pursuit to the guard booth, and the final words, "Thank you for letting me out." When he finished, a heavy silence fell over the room. The doctor glanced at the manager at the owner. It was clear, not a single one of them believed him. In their eyes, it was the result of exhaustion, stress, or a psychological episode. "Listen, Arthur," the owner said kindly. "You've been a loyal and honest watchman for us for years. You need rest. We'll arrange a good pension for you. Go home and take it easy." Arthur said nothing. He understood. That same day, he submitted his formal resignation. The following year, Arthur spent the rest of his days in his small terraced house. He rarely went out. His children and grandchildren did their best to keep his spirits up, but he lived perpetually in the shadow of a deep-seated fear. He was haunted by questions. Nothing even happened there. No one else saw a thing. The manager said there wasn't a single mark on the warehouse doors. So what was it? If it was a spirit or some other creature, why didn't it harm me? Why did it say, "Thank you"? Did I help it get out of the warehouse? How? And those empty eyes, they still don't let me sleep. They were just watching, as if filled with some deep, ancient sorrow or hatred that had no words. He remained trapped in these circling thoughts. The terror of that night had taken such a hold on his mind that he sometimes started at his own shadow. And whenever the night grew deep and a sound echoed through his quiet house, Arthur's eyes would dart straight to his front door, as if waiting for the woman with the black eyes to come visiting once more. And often he would hear that rasping voice again, "Thank you."